Welcome to EPG Pathshala. In this module, we are going to look at social policy and welfare state as part of the course on social policy. I'm Dr. Shuli Kumar, Associate Professor, School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. The topics that we are going to discuss in this particular module are the conceptual framework of welfare state and the various debates around them, the nature of welfare states and its sociological and economic arrangements, the foundation of Indian welfare state and the various welfare programs, and a summary of the same. To understand social welfare, we need to really go into the concepts that were utilized to define the same, though it is an evolutionary concept and continues to be debated and sometimes contested in amongst the theorists who write on social welfare. Social welfare as a term can be deduced from the concept of individual welfare with a reference to a more collective form of well-being of a community or an entire nation. We spoke about the capabilities approach earlier. So social welfare has also been similarly debated, discussed and contested, and there is a generalized understanding that it is individual welfare in the context of the collective life that people live in, and in more so in the context of the nation and the society within which individuals live in. Family is considered to be the primary caregiving and care providing social system, followed by the market. When I say market, it means the private players and private companies and MNC, multinational companies, which not just provide services but also provide employment and income generation to a nation as a whole, and also the community life which individuals are part of. They belong to different specific societies or communities, and they engage with it in different cultural contexts and social contexts. So therefore, that is also very important part of the welfare of individuals. And most of all, if both family and community and the market fail to provision the well-being of individuals, then it is the role of the state to ensure that every individual in a nation is taken care of. So generally understood is that family is primary caregiving of the welfare of an individual, and if family is not able to do so, then it is the community and the market or the private players. But finally, it is the state which should be duty holder to ensure that welfare of individuals are taken care of. The concept of welfare state arose from the growing need of state as a provider. And by welfare, they mean minimum standards of health, housing, income, education, below which citizens should not fall, below which citizens should not be deprived within the national context. Hence, welfare state was more or less seen as a social safety network. Most historians essentially give the reason for a need for a welfare state is the move towards industrialized societies. So post-industrial revolution, the societies moved from largely agricultural feudal society towards a more organized and industrialized processes, and thereby the family and the community, the network that was existing, there was a fragmenting of the safety networks that family and community and society provided, and therefore it was felt that state should be responsible to ensure that the fruits of industrialization and profits thereby generated should be given to the citizens to ensure various welfare provisioning like health, education and housing. And the beginning, in fact, if we look at the history of the notion and idea of welfare state, it was in United Kingdom, that is England, and Beveridge was the pathbreaker in this, where he highlighted that there are 5 giant social evils within the society, industrialized society to be more specific, which weakened the British society after World War II. And these 5 dimensions were ignorance, disease, idleness, squalor, and want. He further added that as a representative figure of all its citizens, state has the onus to ensure that British society is free from these 5 giant evils. So that was the beginning of making a state responsible for the welfare of its citizens. There are varied theories of welfare state, and there is a heterogeneity across welfare states that originates from various schools of thought. So while academic discussion on welfare state was one part of the discourse, the other part was that the states also evolved through their experiences of people's needs and wants, and therefore they have always been a bone of contention between which part of the theory should inform what kind of shape a country should take forward in welfare provisioning for its citizens. And more or less it is a very dynamic concept, because overall the economic conditions in the world has also been evolving and changing over time. Gostassping Anderson's made an effort to put welfare states into specific typologies using theoretical constructions. They are not complete in itself, even they acknowledge that. However, they enable us to understand some form of various models that are existing in the world over. They looked at the systemic structuralist theory, wherein they said the welfare state is inevitable, that there can be no possibility of any other form of governance. So welfare state is a given in industrialized society. Given that industrialization gradually destroys the pre-industrial mode of social safety nets such as family, church, guild solidarity and alike, through such factors as modernization, mobility, appearance of individualism and market dependency to be therefore there is a need for the welfare state to address the fallouts of this breakup of social safety networks and ensure that welfare is provided by the state itself, since the various different group formations are not able to provide the same to individuals. The second theory is the institutional approach, which focuses on the defense of the market from the intrusion of politics and advocates free market system, that is laissez-faire. This is of course what promotes the capitalist mode of production, and it is understood that state should not interfere in the ways in which a market operates or functions, and therefore it is also propagated by the liberals to say that if the state interferes, then it invites socialism, and socialism is considered to be a bad thing in such situations. And it's also understood in such societies and states that socialism curbs individual freedom and it does not enable democracy to run by the majoritarian demands. And if the majority asks to compensate for market weakness, which then it should include both workers and the capitalists, and there will be more pressure on public expenditure. So the idea is that socialism or mobilization of workers is not a requirement for ensuring welfare of citizens. In fact, democracy and the majoritarian rule is a better prospect, because that's where most of the people will get some form of benefit. They can acquire those benefits because they are progressively able to earn well and cater to their own needs through buying insurance or buying welfare and health facilities or educational facilities on their own. The third approach considers social class as a major agent of change. It is called class mobilization thesis. It emphasizes that balance of class power determines distributional outcomes. Also, it follows the idea that parliament is an important institution to convert class mobilization into desired social reforms and policies. In that context, it's socialism which this particular theoretical construct talks about, wherein it's understood that the parliamentary form of democracy will ensure that whatever comes as demands from class mobilization, they are able to convert it into adequate policy frameworks and welfare measures for all citizens in that country. According to this theory, welfare does more than just remove social evils in the society. It also strengthens the labor movements by equipping the wage earners with essential power resources. That is that labor should be allowed to unionize, to collectivize and make demands to the parliament for effective social welfare measures, and the state should be able to provision that through their own policy articulations. So it encourages participation of individuals in a different way than the liberal approaches which is as part of institutional approach. Each of these three theoretical approaches have informed the ways in which welfare states work world over. And Gustav Asping Anderson has categorized welfare states into three main categories. One is the liberal welfare state, the second is the corporatist welfare state, and the third is the social democratic welfare state. Let's try and understand each one of them one by one. The first one is the liberal welfare state. These welfare states are categorized by means tested benefits, modest social insurance and model universal transfers. So the whole approach in the liberal welfare states is that to understand which individual is eligible and not able to acquire adequate income to look after their basic needs. So benefits are given only to those individuals who may be falling into poverty or who have low income situations where they are not able to acquire adequate employment or buy insurance or buy welfare measures. So in that case, the liberal welfare state will ensure a certain format of benefits to ensure that people who belong to such populations, they get adequate basic services like housing, unemployment dole, educational services, and perhaps even health services which they may not be able to acquire because they do not have adequate money to buy it. But the focus is that even these people will be given these benefits till a point of time when they are able to get better employment, they are able to acquire better incomes and move ahead through in the liberal capitalist format of development. So there is a presumption and an understanding that every individual is capable of moving towards their own resources, and once they acquire these resources, they would not require the state to provide them with welfare benefits. So the idea in the liberal welfare states is individualization, market orientation, and more laissez-faire, where the market dictates who gets what and how they acquire it through their own profit generation and income generation. The second approach is the corporatist or the conservative welfare state, and the very typology defines that the church plays a big role in the measurement of who deserves what and how welfare should be distributed by the state. So church and state come together to do the welfare provisioning in some of the countries. Specifically mentioned would be Germany, which continues to operate with the help of the church. So in fact, church is responsible to provision and provide for health services, schools, and also housing. The welfare state therefore upholds the status, that is the differentials in terms of rights, and hence maintain the social structure of class and status. So the effort is to continue to maintain the differentials or the social status and not bring about any transformatory change in the class structures, but provision welfare in a way wherein everybody gets the basic services. They don't encourage the market to assume the role of the provider of welfare. So there is no partnership between the state and the market. The market does not provide welfare and is not encouraged to provide welfare. In fact, this particular regime displaces the market from the turf of the welfare state, and it's largely shaped by the authority of the church, and therefore the traditional family structure is something that is kept intact. There is no transformation of gender relations, and there are no specific provisioning just for women. So all the provisioning of welfare is done towards the family rather than individual. So individualism is not encouraged. It's largely the family that through which welfare provisioning is done, and the responsible stakeholders are the state and the church. The social democratic welfare states in fact have imbibed both the liberal and the corporatist approaches, and gone beyond that, more so from the Marxist approach of the class and the class struggle. So these welfare states are responsible for equality of the highest standard. So there is an understanding that oppression and class structures need to be removed and transformed so that everybody is able to live equitably in a given society, and are guided, therefore this particular model is guided by the socialist democratic principles. This state promotes policies which are highly decommodifying and universalistic in nature, and yet suits to differential expectations. So when we say decommodifying, welfare is not seen as a commodity. It's not to be bought, it's not to be paid for, it is something that the state needs to be provisioning. So in socialist democratic countries, to mention Finland, Sweden and Norway, we find that most of the welfare provisioning is the responsibility of the state. The state ensures that each and every individual gets a basic standard of welfare which does not get differentially located. So there is a clear understanding, even if somebody is not getting adequate income in the workplace, the provisioning of welfare does not change. It's same to somebody who may be earning much higher in the workplace. So income differentials or class differentials are not taken into account to make welfare programs and social policy programs. The dualism of state and market, or between middle class and working class, is consistently reduced. Therefore, it is also understood that there should not be a dualism between the middle class and the working class, and therefore the social rights need to be enjoyed by all identically, and the benefits therefore should be given out according to the income. So therefore, if somebody is not earning adequate income, that person will probably get better benefits than somebody who is earning more income and is able to look after their own needs. That person or that family or household will get less benefits than the working class. So in many ways, the equalizing effect of social welfare policy forms the core of socialist democratic countries, and this in fact has a great deal of impact not just on class relations but also on gender relations. So these are some of the countries which also encourage and give paternal leave equivalent to maternal leave, maternity leave. So the choice is amongst the family members to decide who takes the leave to look after the child. And also there are similar child protection mechanisms which ensure that child rights are given through education, through development and through also participation. Hence, a major approach on defining or classifying welfare regime also enables us to understand that different countries have formulated different mechanisms to provide welfare to their citizens based on the political ideologies which different political parties within the country may be following. So it is not a political act that social policy actually gets formulated in different countries. There is an element of ideology and politics which governs what shape or format different countries ensure welfare policies. There are clear distinctions in terms of outlook and approach between these three sets of welfare regimes, but still if we look a little more closely, we find that in the US, which follows the liberal framework, there is a social security system which is redistributive and universal. And similarly, in social democratic regimes, there is a fusion of liberalism and socialism that go together because they respect individual freedom of choice and deciding what direction they want their lives to be. Hence, our major approach of defining and classifying welfare regime could be based on the role of market, the family and the state as provider of welfare in society. So, it's not just state, but we look at market as well as the family as provider of welfare in any given context. That brings us to the dimension of India as a country and the welfare structure that we in the country follow. It is important to keep the historicity of the evolution of India as a state when we are looking at the welfare structure that is being followed by the state in our country and also evolving and changing. Post-independence, because there is a colonial history which fragmented our economy and destroyed the ways in which traditional families operated or traditional communities operated in providing social safety to the individuals. Therefore, post-independence, there was a great deal of struggle and debate around what should be done to address the social problems and challenges in the society. It was a newly independent country and it was fraught with the social and economic inequality. So, it's not just about social problems, but the ways in which inequalities were getting perpetuated through caste, gender, region, religion. Religious conflict came in as a historic reality in our country with the partition of the country. So, therefore, there were numerous marginalized sections which got created and further exacerbated by the British Raj, where there was a history of violence and discrimination, and therefore, that needed to be addressed by the newly formed Indian state. So, it was not a very easy task to think about how on the one hand we move towards welfare provisioning, on the other hand how do we address the marginalization of numerous different communities and also become economically viable in the world context, because there was a need to ensure adequate income generation because unemployment rates were very high. Agricultural society had completely been destroyed. Agricultural production had become very difficult because of the ways in which the British Raj created tenancy rights and land rights. So, the zamindari system led to garnering of and holding on to larger land holdings. So, the peasantry in itself was subjugated and there was extreme amount of poverty and squalor. So, in this context, therefore, India had to think about what kind of welfare state it was going to become, and the constitutional debates highlighted that these difficulties, and there was a lot of discussion on what should be the equality principle, what should be the policy structure. So, the constitutional document that was evolved borrowed various concepts available from different countries. So for example, we have liberty, fraternity, equality as concepts which borrow from the French and the American Constitution, and at the same time inherently within the country it needed to address the equalities which are contextual and related to the social life of the people. So the fundamental rights were the ones that enshrined that every citizen in this country enjoys civil liberties and basic rights. Along with these civil liberties, the Indian Constitution also takes care of the socio-economic development of the people. Hence, the directive principles of state policy were also conceptualized. It was understood that while we have fundamental rights, it is still a state in making. And therefore, there needs to be certain guiding principles which the state should achieve after a gradual process of policy making, change and transformation of the economy. So the directive principles of the state are very important guiding principles for policy making and shaping of the welfare state in our country. Some of these directive principles, let's take a look at it. That citizens, men and women equally, have the right to an adequate means of livelihood. So instead of work, we are talking of livelihood. When the directive principles conceptualize livelihood, there is a clear understanding that there are many ways in which different people are making adequate income. So it includes aspects like agriculture, artisan lives, individual enterprises in different forms and shapes. So they are not working like in the industrial society. So the continuum of agriculture to industrialization was something that was conceptualized as right to livelihood, and livelihood was broadened under Article 21 to say that it should include housing as well. So the ownership and control of material resources of the community should be so distributed that they best serve the common good. So whatever resources we have in terms of natural resources, land and water and forest need to be evenly distributed, so everybody gets an equal share and has adequate income out of it. That operation of economic system does not result in concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. So there is that socialist principle to say that the means of production should be available to most people in the society and should be equitably owned rather than be owned by only a few to create inequalities in the society. That there is equal pay for equal work for both men and women. So gender was understood very well within the directive principles. That the health and strength of workers, men and women, and the tender age of children are not abused, and that citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter vocations unsuited for their age or strength. So also locating the specificities of men, women and children within the directive principle has played a very important role in also conceptualizing labor laws. So child labor is today banned in specific hazardous industries, and the age at which child can work is has been raised to 14 years. These children are those children should be given. So children continue to be seen as important citizens within the directive principles. Children are to be given opportunities and facilities to develop in healthy manner in conditions of freedom, dignity, and childhood and youth should be protected against exploitation and against moral abandonment. Several laws have come out of these directive principles. So for that matter, Juvenile Justice Act has come out of the whole notion of protection of the child. Similarly, child right to education has been today made a fundamental principle, and therefore how directive principles have also informed social policy over the years is an important dimension. So each of the directive principles give us the possible agency and possibility of evolving human rights, understanding human rights principle, and ensuring a framework for social policy, for social change towards equity and equality within the society. Indian government has developed several welfare programs, as I said, with engagement with civil society, and some of these are the right to education, the right to work through the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So while it is an act, there is a law to regulate the right to work. There is an effective program which ensures that people in rural areas can take up any kind of physical work or manual work, which ensures asset building and ensures collective rights over certain resources within the village community and economy. So this is a significant act and scheme whereby people are recognized as citizens and they can demand work in case of unemployment from the state. Similarly, the National Health Mission has tried to evolve the concept of right to health and basic health, and there is the ways in which different formats of medical help is provided from the grassroots to the district levels for all populations in rural and urban settings. So from beginning with the primary health center to the district health center, all possible facilities are being provided through the National Rural Health Mission. And essentially these programmatic interventions are addressing the needs of the people who are the most marginalized and vulnerable in the context of the country, and recognizing that they are equal citizens in the country. So the directive principles and the fundamental rights formulate and form the basis of developing newer social policies which promote equity and justice within the country. In summation, the concept of welfare state is an overarching concept embracing various forms of political, social and economic standpoints. So there are differing points of theory which look at how different welfare states interact with their citizens and provision welfare and basic services to their citizens. In the earlier sections, we understood how various classification of welfare state is done, but there is always a mix of ideologies. None of them are purist formats. So if we look at the socialist democratic countries, now we see that they are struggling with migrant populations, and they are trying to evolve a new mechanism and new ways to address the needs and rights of such people. And therefore welfare, essentially welfare states and welfare should ensure the well-being and empowerment of its citizens. It must also ensure that various sectional vulnerabilities get addressed while formulating universal policies on the basis of gender, caste, religion, region and many other social stratifications. Some of the usual to add to it is Oja's writing on concept of welfare state and its relevance in the Indian scenario, which would be important and significant for us to understand the Indian context and Indian welfare state. Thank you.